All right, so you wanted to talk crypto predictions, so today we're diving into that.
Yeah, sounds good.
You handed us a pretty interesting, actually, a detailed report
Hmm.
on the top 15 crypto trends we're supposed to expect in the next couple of years. And
Sure.
then this article that's laser focused on 3 specific coins they say are going to explode.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be sure.
For sure.
And lots of buzz, lots of potential out there.
Right.
But as always, we're going to have to figure out what's hype and what's real.
Exactly. And speaking of hype, both of our sources seem to think that Bitcoin is
Yes.
gearing up for a possibly massive surge.
Yep.
We're talking about this Bitcoin halving that's slated for April 2024.
Right.
And essentially what this event is, it cuts the rate of new Bitcoin being created in half.
Yeah, and that has historically been something that's led to some pretty big price movements.
Yeah.
And this report even uses some AI analysis to predict that Bitcoin could reach $72,000 by then.
$72,000. Okay, now that's a number.
That's a pretty big number.
But let's get real. What does that actually mean for the average person who's like maybe just starting to
Right.
dip their toes into the crypto waters?
That's the question, right? Because
Yeah.
a potential Bitcoin boom is exciting and all, but it's important not to get swept up in the frenzy.
Right.
I mean, remember ICOs, those initial coin offerings
Oh, yeah.
that were all the rage a few years back?
Everybody and their grandma was throwing money at anything that even whispered blockchain.
Exactly. And this report, I think, highlights how important it is to be cautious,
Oh.
to do your research and, not just jump in with both feet.
Right.
But it is interesting. The author seems to think we're moving to a future where fundraising in the crypto world becomes much more automated.
Which, I mean, when you think about it, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It could cut down on some of the risk, maybe make the whole process more efficient.
Potentially.
But let's be honest, there's always going to be somebody
Oh, of course.
who is looking to capitalize on the hype no matter what.
Yeah, that's human nature, I guess.
That's human nature, all right.
Speaking of hype, this article we have is really talking up Solana,
Right.
predicting it could reach $900.
900.
And the reasoning is this technical chart pattern called a bull pennant.
Okay, time for a quick explanation. For those who maybe aren't familiar with the ins and outs of technical analysis,
Sure.
essentially a bull pennant is a pattern that traders look for on price charts, and it's supposed to signal a potential continuation of an upward trend.
Right, but while these patterns can be interesting,
Yeah.
they're far from foolproof.
Right.
It's like trying to predict the future by, reading tea leaves or something.
Right.
There's a lot more at play than just lines on a chart.
So maybe take that $900 prediction with a grain of salt.
A healthy dose of skepticism is always a good idea in this space.
All right, good advice.
Look at the bigger picture. Understand the underlying technology,
Mm-hmm.
the team behind it, the overall market sentiment, all that good stuff.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's step into a realm that feels like it's straight out of science fiction.
Okay.
The metaverse.
Yeah.
This report paints a wild picture talking about explosive growth, a market 10 times larger than the entire crypto market today by 2030.
Wow.
They even mentioned Dubai going all in on this.
Yeah, Dubai's been really ahead of the curve in embracing blockchain technology.
Right.
They've launched a number of initiatives to support the development of metaverse and Web3 companies.
See, this is what I love about this stuff. It's those fascinating little details that really bring these trends to life.
Absolutely.
But even with all this potential, are we all really going to be living in virtual worlds?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
I think it's more likely that we'll see a blending of the physical and digital realms rather than a complete replacement of one for the other.
Like augmented reality experiences, virtual events,
Exactly.
things like that.
Yeah, and this report actually touches on a really interesting concept called state metaverses.
Wait, state metaverses?
Yeah.
As in like governments creating their own virtual spaces?
Exactly.
What would that even look like?
Well, imagine being able to access government services attending town hall meetings.
Wow.
Or even casting votes, all within a virtual environment.
Interesting.
It's a fascinating, albeit slightly unsettling thought.
Yeah.
This report does predict a survival of the fittest scenario when it comes to all these different metaverses that are popping up.
Which makes sense. Not every virtual world is going to be a hit.
Right.
Just like in the real world, the ones that offer unique value-engaging experiences and strong communities
Sure.
are likely to thrive. It's going to be a wild ride to see which ones come out on top. And speaking of things that might be here to stay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about NFTs.
Okay.
Remember when everybody was going crazy for those like really expensive NFT art
Ah, the
collections?
digital art craze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This report takes a pretty skeptical stance on those, but there's one area where they see huge potential for NFTs, and that is real-world applications.
Interesting.
They specifically call out Nike and their digital sneakers.
Oh, that's an interesting example because you're not just buying a piece of digital art.
Right,
You're getting a digital asset that's tied to a real-world product.
right.
I mean, you can actually wear those digital sneakers in certain video games and things like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And it speaks to that idea of NFTs moving beyond speculation and into the realm of like utility and usefulness.
Right.
And you know what else is interesting? This article we have here
Yeah.
highlights a project called Rexus Finance, and they're all about tokenizing real-world assets,
Okay.
specifically real estate.
Interesting.
Imagine owning a tiny piece of a hotel.
Like a digital timeshare.
Yeah.
But instead of having a, flimsy paper certificate, you have a token on the blockchain that represents your fractional ownership.
Exactly.
And it's not just limited to vacation properties either.
Hmm.
I mean, this report talks about tokenizing everything from art and commodities to entire private companies.
Wow.
It's a pretty wild concept.
That is a game changer.
Yeah.
Because it could potentially open up investing to people who previously didn't have access to these types of assets.
Right. Democratize it in a way
Mhm.
that we haven't really seen before.
Exactly, though. The report does caution that this whole asset tokenization thing is probably going to be a slow burn.
Yeah, as with any kind of disruptive technology,
Right.
there are bound to be some hurdles.
Yeah.
Regulations and legal frameworks need to catch up,
Right.
which always takes time.
You can't exactly issue a digital deed to a house if the government doesn't recognize it as legitimate.
Exactly.
But still, it's an incredibly exciting prospect.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine a world where anybody can invest in this, like, really diverse portfolio of assets.
Right.
Even with, like, a small amount of capital.
Yeah. The potential is definitely there.
For sure.
And it could fundamentally change how we think about things like ownership and investment.
Yeah.
Speaking of reshaping things, let's talk about gaming for a minute.
Okay.
You remember those early blockchain games?
Oh.
Pixelated characters, clunky interfaces.
It's rough.
And let's not forget the debate about whether they were even fun to play.
You're being way too nice.
This report makes the case that things are about to change in a big way,
Okay.
that blockchain gaming is about to level up.
Okay.
They're seeing tons of investment pouring into GameFi projects
Huh?
that actually prioritize gameplay.
Oh, okay.
Things like stunning graphics, immersive experiences,
Okay.
and crucially, sustainable tokenomic models.
That's key, right?
Yeah, that's what's going to make or break this whole thing.
Right.
If blockchain gaming is really going to break into the mainstream, it needs to be more than just a novelty.
For sure.
It has to be fun, first and foremost.
Nobody wants to play a boring game, even if they might make a quick buck.
Exactly.
Mm.
I mean, imagine if this was the thing that finally brought crypto to the masses, though.
Right, because gaming has this huge global audience.
Enormous.
Yeah.
It's a really intriguing thought.
Yeah.
The idea that you could actually own your in-game assets
Mm-hmm.
and potentially even earn a living playing games,
Yeah.
it's pretty powerful stuff.
Okay. Before we wrap things up, let's talk about one last trend. And this one feels a little bit like a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right.
Remember that friend who was always like, oh, yeah, I just made a killing
Yeah.
just by using this platform? Well, chances are they were cashing in on airdrops.
Airdrops.
Yes.
So that's basically when a crypto project distributes free tokens to users,
Yes.
often in exchange for completing certain tasks or just for being an early adopter.
And this report says get ready for like a full-blown airdrop explosion in the coming months.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see a lot more projects using those
Right?
as a way to kind of drum up excitement and, gain some traction,
Right.
especially in such a crowded market.
But here's the thing, though. The report also says it's not just about, like, signing up for every airdrop under the sun and hoping for the best.
Definitely not.
Hmm.
There's definitely a strategy to it.
Right.
You need to understand the projects,
Mm-hmm.
evaluate their potential, and be selective about where you put your time and energy.
Right. Be an informed participant, not just chasing those free tokens.
Exactly.
Kind of like with everything else in the crypto space.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Right.
The more you understand about the technology, the trends,
Right.
the potential risks, the better.
Yeah.
The better equipped you'll be to make good decisions.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This has been a whirlwind of information.
It has.
We've covered like everything from Bitcoin halving to metaverse mania to the potential of asset tokenization and the future of gaming.
a lot to unpack.
It's just incredible to think about how much potential this technology has to reshape our world, you know?
It really is.
And
And even though we don't have all the answers, just being part of the conversation,
yeah,
exploring these ideas, that's what makes it so fascinating.
exactly. Now, before we let you go, we want to leave you with something to chew on.
Okay.
Remember how bullish that report author was about fan tokens?
The ones that are tied to sports teams and all that.
Yep. He even said that, they haven't quite taken off yet, but he's convinced they're like
Right.
on the verge of something big. He put his money where his mouth is. He's investing heavily in them.
Well, that's certainly one way to show you believe in something. Right.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see if his prediction comes true.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see if fan tokens really do offer a new way to engage with fans
Yeah.
and, create those new experiences.
Uh-huh.
Or if it's just going to be another fad.
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question.
Yeah, good question.
And we'll leave it to you, our listeners, to ponder that one. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, stay curious.